2, 1, live.
Bula Vinaka, welcome everyone to this session. In this session, we'll be looking at building resilient island economies and communities in the Pacific, particularly talking about balancing protection and production. As we all know, the Pacific Island region encompasses a wide and a varied ecosystems of islands, cultural and economic context. And, you know, as Pacific Islanders, we recognize and value the multi-tiered benefits that are derived from our oceans and our island resources, including, of course, for food security, cash income, recreation, cultural, and spiritual benefits. Countries across the region, as we all know, are pursuing sustainable economic development pathways that also enhance management and protection of their natural resources. And many of our Pacific Island countries and territories are pursuing a range of innovative financing so that, you know, these mechanisms could support efforts that would support the our own population, things like green taxes, bonds, trust funds, for instance, perhaps the Micronesian Challenge, and development of all sorts of, we're seriously thinking of ways to strengthen economic resilience to climate change in a more sustainable way. And even more so now with COVID-19, the pressure is there to really look at all options to ensure the economic viability of our population in the Pacific is sustained. We're excited to share this session with you. We have a range of speakers who are well versed with this topic in this space. In this session, we will explore consumption and production as driving forces for Pacific Island economies, and how the regional organizations, the governments, private sector, and community stakeholders can use and manage natural resources in a sustainable manner while advancing economic development for our country and our people. And the session will discuss policy, national approaches to sustainable production of island resources, and also particularly looking at the agriculture sector that will ensure food security while generating revenue for communities in our local businesses. We'll also be looking at national approaches and pathway to sustainable production of island resources. We will also be looking at how perhaps sustainable production can improve poverty alleviation and support transition towards low carbon and green economies. And of course, you know, the overarching lenses for this session, we will also be considering COVID-19 and how our Pacific Island economies and communities would be responding to this in conjunction with the private sector. So today we'll hear from Karen Mapuzua, the Director, Land Resource Division at the Pacific Community. Karen will be talking about the regional perspective of economic resilience and sustainability for our Pacific Island countries. We will then hear from a government perspective, Jerry Spooner, who will be presenting to us on you know, how the Vanuatu government is learning and leaning towards improving the economic framework for sustainable tourism in Vanuatu. We'll also be hearing from two private sector views. We have Jody Smith from Matanataki. Jody will be presenting to us Bulumbatiki, a case study on inclusive economic development, as well as Yannick Dominique, I hope I have it right, from BioEco, who is a consultant and will be speaking to us in particular about New Caledonia and how studies for potential economic diversification you know, are looking into strengthening sustainability in New Caledonia. So we do have a lineup of very exciting speakers, and without further ado, I'm going to ask Karen to take the floor. But before that, just a reminder to all our audience, this is a bilingual session. There is a button on the bottom right of your screen that will enable you to select which language you want to listen in on. And we also invite all of you, if you do have questions, please use the Q&A bubble so that we can exchange ideas and also generate discussion at the end. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you very much, Susanna. Talofa lava, everybody. I really appreciate the invitation to participate today. I think it's an important conversation that we have because the paradigm of economic growth as being not only the key development tool, but also the outcome that we're seeking is still very, very strong. And as we all know, this paradigm has in the past and continues to contribute to significant environmental degradation. First thing I'd like to say, though, is I think that aiming for sustainability isn't really enough. We need to be thinking beyond sustainability towards regeneration. We need to be rebuilding and restoring and regenerating our environment, not just trying to sustain where we are right now. This will lead us to what I'd refer to as true sustainability and economic resilience, rather than this tightrope that we're currently walking on. I think it's also important for the region to recognize that economic resilience actually depends on this. It's not an optional extra or a nice to have. I'll speak mostly about agriculture, that's of course where I'm from, and its role in economic resilience. And I have to say, it may be the best friend or the worst enemy of our environment. And the way we practice agriculture, we can practice agriculture in a way that builds resilience, both environmental and economic, or has short-term economic gains, but at the cost of sustainability in all its forms, and ironically, ultimately also economic resilience. We've got in our region many examples of where agriculture has led to deforestation, soil degradation, loss of biodiversity, the introduction of pesticides that are harmful to human health, erosion, which of course impacts on our reefs and our coastal fisheries. And a very well-known example of this is the taro industry in Taveuni in Fiji. In the last 15 to 20 years, we've seen farmers move from subsistence towards semi-subsistence and commercial farming. And with it, adverse effects came on the environment. For a time there, Taveuni had the highest rates of deforestation in Fiji. Land use was completely unsustainable. There was a great decline in soil fertility. There were water catchment problems. Everything was impacted. The soil degradation became so bad that no matter how much fertilizer those farmers put on their fields, they just couldn't get a taro that grew to meet export requirements anymore. So that drive had impacted so negatively on the economic resilience. And if I can make a prediction, I can see this cycle potentially happening again with the kava industry, as our farmers and our policymakers gain interest and enthusiasm for all the potentials that market has. Traditionally, as many of you know, it's grown in a very sustainable agroforestry system, but the increase in consumption and commercial value has already shown environmental impact. And we'll head up to the North Pacific. Since 1975, almost 70% of the previously intact native forests of Pohnpei have been degraded. And that's principally because of the increase in cultivation of kava. Now our export markets are growing, production is expanding, and countries that didn't previously grow kava, like the Solomon Islands, are now starting to grow it. So there's a risk that this also impacts on food crops as farmers move away from growing their food to growing a cash crop that has so much promise. But I have to say, we are now seeing examples of agricultural approaches in the region and market opportunities and policies, which can have a positive impact and be a powerful tool in regeneration of our environment. And one of these important trends is towards organic production. The market for organic products is rapidly expanding. It reached 160 billion euro in 2019, and farmers are responding. In the Pacific, the amount of organically certified land expand from around 46,000 hectares in 2012 to over 100,000 hectares in 2019. It's taken some time, I have to say, for our policymakers in the region to recognise the multiple benefits and opportunities for organic, but increasingly we're seeing organic agriculture referenced in development strategies, both in the agriculture sector, but also in related sectors. Outside of the region, we're seeing organic being aggressively used in policy to protect the environment. And the EU is a fantastic example. The farm to fork strategy, which is at the heart of the European Green Deal, which aims to make food systems fair and healthy and environmentally friendly, has a target of having 25% of farmland under organic production by 2030. That's a fantastic example for our region to take a look at. From a regional perspective, it's really important that we share learning and experience and develop common tools and policy frameworks so that countries don't need to start from scratch. An example is organic is another good example of that. We don't have to reinvent the wheel there if countries or farmers are looking at converting to organics. There's substantial experience in the region in developing policy, in building markets, and in the production systems. But organic is just one example. We need to recognise these issues as they're arising and tackle them together. Back to Kava again. A regional production and quality standard would benefit both the environment and also market development. To manage pesticides in the region, which are a major threat to our biodiversity, a technical support mechanism for regional pesticide registration is really crucial. This won't only protect the environment, it will help increase confidence in export markets around the safety of the products that we export. So in short, if we produce in ways that are unsustainable and environmentally damaging, ultimately it impacts on our economic resilience. We will lose production, our production will become more vulnerable to climate change impacts, and we will lose the opportunity for those high value niche markets that are out there looking for our products. We can access those markets through marketing sustainability and marketing our environmentally friendly practices. So we need to make a paradigm shift in the region, and it needs to happen at the highest level of policymakers to recognise that economic resilience and environmental resilience are inseparable rather than in opposition. The only way to do that is to really work as a region and to continue to share our learnings and experience as we make this paradigm shift together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Again, for our audience, if you do have questions, please use the Q&A bubble. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Jerry to give us, Jerry, would you like to share your screen? Oh no, who's sharing the screen? Wuta. Thank you for sharing the screen. Jerry, I think you're muted. Can you unmute yourself? Thank you. You're still muted. Can you unmute yourself, Jerry? Thanks. Nice.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Apologies for that. Okay, so my presentation would just be a quick short presentation highlighting the government's efforts with our recovery, our recovery efforts. Before I move on from the first slide I have, Vanuatu's Nivala Road Law Tourism, our new journey. It has created some a lot of questions too, and what we'd like to and have continuously been doing is clarifying that we're not trying to change much other than just improve how we manage and the development, guided support towards the development of the sector itself going forward. We'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so in response to the questions that have been asked for the purpose of today's presentation, so for Vanuatu, after the closure of borders from COVID-19 and also Tropical Cyclone Harold earlier this year, with as a country as a whole, it has been a very challenging year for Vanuatu, for us. And so we quickly put together an advisory committee that was tasked to help the Department of Tourism in putting together a plan to guide us in our recovery efforts, our economic recovery efforts, and also the immediate safety response plan. So it took us an interesting period of over a month, because this is not normal for how we respond to crisis, and COVID-19 particularly has put us on the spot. And I'm pretty sure it's not just Vanuatu, it's other countries around the world that have been put to this challenge. And so what we've come up with is we've put together teams representation from within government, development partners, and also the private sector, where the team was able to put together a plan, immediate response, economic recovery plan. And it was a 6-month plan, where the focus was to be on, if you've had copy or access to looking at what we have been able to put together, and that is to focus on the 5 different pillars. Pillar 1 being focus on health, safeguarding the health of our citizens and also visitors. And the pillar 2 is also looking at access, international movement of people, and that's something that has been an ongoing challenge with how we've communicated with general stakeholder, and that the government has not closed its borders, but it's just focused on managing priority services that we would still like to have continue. And then pillar 3 also is looking at the preparedness for businesses. What should be the priority efforts that we should be looking at? And as you could see, with the partnership we have with several stakeholders, we were able to put together a safe business operations guideline, policy guideline, and training has started, sorry. And the focus is on ensuring business appropriately trained, looking at hygiene issues. Trainings that we have looks at areas around supervisors, focusing on supervisors and staffs. And the next that we're looking at is focusing on the auditing aspect of it, where we'd like to see businesses that have completed trainings in preparation towards opening of borders, would like to see certification of businesses and the quality and quality and of the audits. What's the word? Ensuring this credibility in the whole process itself, and that's something we'd like to manage, ensure that we get from this whole exercise. And then also looking at the marketing, ongoing effort that our marketing arm, the Vanuatu Tourism Office, to keep in the minds of potential visitors that we are putting all efforts into protecting the destination itself, and in preparation of when borders are going to be open again. And also the most, I believe, one of the very important but challenging pillar is communication, managing public perception. That's been an ongoing challenge that we have with different understanding of the situation and the different efforts that's been ongoing by all different stakeholders, particularly government. So as quickly highlighted, we could see in the tourism crisis response and recovery plan, the 5 pillars I've just quickly gone through are the main focus for the immediate response. We go to the next slide. Okay. So now, when talking about the challenge we've been faced with this year, it has also given us the opportunity. The situation has presented us with this opportunity to look at in-house issues that we weren't able to address before COVID-19. And of all issues, we looked at reviewing, looking at addressing the issue that we have with Vanuatu, and that is we have 6 provinces altogether, and islands are scattered, and the challenge of maintaining consistent communication, that has always been an issue. But the challenge we have has given us the opportunity to look at bringing forward the importance and the need to implement the Vanuatu Sustainable Tourism Policy. And so the mid to long-term recovery efforts will be guided by what we are now in the stage of finalizing, and that is our Vanuatu Sustainable Tourism Strategy. With it will come the 6th Provincial Tourism Implementation Plan, making sure implementation of the policy itself goes right down to all province, and that is supported by the government's decentralization policy throughout all 6 provinces. So there's just a quick snapshot of what the strategy looks like. We have the 4 different target areas, being the well-being through high value, low impact tourism. And then target 2 looks at resilience through niche tourism product development. And target 3 is diversification. Obviously, agritourism is the program we have under target 3. And then we have target 4 being sustainability through certification, supporting investment for local Vanuatu, and then also investment and support that I'll be able to provide some points more if there's some questions to understand our efforts in what kind of support we have there for industry, looking at issue around survival, and then mid to long-term support. You can go to the city. So I think that's my quick slide. I'll look forward to some questions if there's any during question and answer time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. That was short and sweet and to the point. Thank you so much. So in the interest of time, I would like to invite Jody. Thank you, Jody.
Bula from Fiji, everybody. My name is Jody Smith. I'm with a company called Matanataki. Today I'm going to be talking about Bulumbatiki, which is one of the community businesses in our pipeline. But before I get into that, just a little bit of background about Matanataki. So we are an impact-focused development company. Think of us like a private equity style firm. We originate deals for investment, and we bring investment to those deals. So we are currently doing deals on a direct deal basis, but we are working towards having 2 facilities. So those are like investment funds for Fiji. So the work that we do is really focused on bringing resilience to Fiji's Great Sea Reef. The Great Sea Reef has been identified as one of the most resilient reefs in the world. So when we're able to stabilize temperatures at 2 degrees, if we can do that. Fiji's reef is one of the reefs most likely to survive those warmer temperatures, and it could be used to reseed reefs around the world. However, if we don't stop the local anthropogenic threats, then the reef is going to have a very difficult chance of surviving. So the concept we screen businesses and look at those businesses that can actually contribute to the reef's resilience. So to date, we have screened 125 businesses in Fiji, and we have a pipeline of businesses that can deliver financial and environmental returns. We've got about 40. And we value the investment needed around about 75 million. We're 4 partners listed below. We have complementary skill sets. And the sectors that we focus on are the ones on the screen. So waste and plastics management is the lowest hanging fruit for us. Regenerative agriculture is also key. Sustainable fisheries, coastal restoration, and then we have complementary sectors of tourism, forest restoration, and renewable energy. So if you want to hear more about this, I'm speaking again on Friday on the WWF panel, and I'll go into more detail. But today I am going to be talking specifically about Bulumbatiki, which is very dear to my heart. I've been working as a volunteer with Bulumbatiki for the last 3 years. And the reason I became involved was really to start supporting them with certification as a key tool for market access. But as I became involved, I realized all of the gaps in knowledge and capacity around business that needed to be filled. So what is Bulumbatiki? So it's a community-owned business in Fiji. It's on a remote island. It takes about 4 hours to get there in a 23-foot open fiberglass boat. I have been in 3-meter seas on that ocean. I've nearly died. It is not easy to get to. They make products from coconuts. Currently, they're making virgin coconut oil. You can see a picture of their on-island processing facility. They're actually the first Indigenous-owned Fijian business to have achieved USDA, NOP, and EU organic certifications, and they have an internationally recognized food safety certification. The only other islands in Fiji that have these organic certifications are owned by multimillionaires. So this has been a really huge achievement, and the members of the cooperative are incredibly proud of having achieved this. And what this does is it gives them an opportunity to create products which are value added on island. And so they're making more money than they were making when they were doing copra. So socioeconomic situation of many Fijians, it's very similar to that of people in other so-called developing countries. Many people have to leave their more remote homes. They've got to go to the city in search of work. And if they stay home, they're often fishing or farming unsustainably to meet subsistence needs and to meet income needs. So this is how or why Bulumbatiki was formed. A fantastic young volunteer called Callum Drummond came to the island 6 years ago, and he saw how little they were making from copra. And he said to them, "So what else are you making?" They said, "Well, we make virgin oil." And he recognized that this was something that was becoming very popular in overseas markets. So he said, "Okay, you make it, send it to me. I will rebottle it in my bedroom in the UK and I will sell it for you." But he knew nothing about business. He didn't know anything about certification, and he knew nothing about food safety. And that's how I got involved. So I started supporting the business about 3 years ago. And what we've discovered through this period is that it's actually not possible to make a decent living from a value-added product. And this is really one of the key messages I'll be giving during my short talk. So we're in the transition period right now of Bulumbatiki becoming a surf lifestyle brand. So they're going to be producing surfboard wax, sunglasses, after sun body lotion, and products like that. So I'm going to dive into the financials because this is really the key thing I want to share with you from a business perspective. So to date, over a 5-year period, Bulumbatiki has had 675,000 Fijian dollars put into its business, either in kind or in cash, and you can halve that for US dollars. So with this amount of money invested, which frankly, from my view, is really big for the little that's been achieved, these have been the major lessons. If there is no formal business and financial planning at the start of a community business, or any business for that matter, and if there's no thought given to the market, and if there is no consideration about the total capital and operational investment that that company needs, and if there is no, I call myself like an angel incubator as opposed to an angel investor, to support that fledgling business, it will fail. If I had not been there to support Bulumbatiki for the 3-year period, it would not have survived. So what has this yielded in terms of a financial return? Well, environmentally, it's done a lot. There's no more burning on the island. There's no chemicals. There's reforestation programs. But in terms of financials, because we need financial stability in a company in order for it to continue. So what has it yielded? Well, you can see that there have been losses every single year, including this year. It is only next year where they will go into profit. Now, a business really, if it doesn't achieve profit by year 3, it's not going to survive. So why has this been so slow? Why 6 years to profit? Well, there was no business planning. There was no professional management. There was no hands-on incubation. And the other key constraint was that financing and in-kind support came in piecemeal. You know, I would help whenever I had a spare evening or a spare weekend or a spare week. I found myself working at Christmas Day. And this was another really key point. Grant money and aid funding has very, very heavy reporting and application requirements. It takes so much time. It takes you away from running the actual business. And then because it comes piecemeal, that money really ends up being wasted. So in my view, if we want to balance protection and production, that is, if we want positive environmental and social returns, which are financially self-sustaining, then we need to create businesses, not do projects. And that means plan your business, have a financial model before you start, have a market before you start. Treat the money that goes in as an investment, not as a grant, and then have ongoing incubation to support the businesses. And then just as a last little aside, and this is kind of the bigger picture, I just wanted to give you a comparison between what it costs to produce the product in different places. So Fiji can produce a 300 ml jar of organic certified VCO for $3.50 US per unit. The Philippines, because it's mechanized and has factories, can produce the same for $1.80. And in Australia, they don't make it there, but if they were, and if the people making it were to be paid minimum wage, minimum Australian wage, a 300 ml unit would cost $42.97. Thank you, that's it from me.
Thank you, Jody. That was very insightful. And without further ado, I'd like to invite Yannick, Dominique, if you can take the floor. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Bonjour à tout le monde. Donc, je suis Yannick Dominique, donc je suis consultant donc en Nouvelle-Calédonie et je vais aujourd'hui vous parler d'une étude qui a été menée en Nouvelle-Calédonie pour étudier le potentiel de diversification économique avec donc potentiel à forte soutenabilité pour la Nouvelle-Calédonie. Donc, c'est une étude qui a été lancée par l'Agence française de développement, le WWF et l'ADEME en Nouvelle-Calédonie, et avec pour objectif d'étudier un scénario possible de la relance économique et notamment de la mise en place de la transition écologique en Nouvelle-Calédonie pour aller vers une économie beaucoup plus soutenable. Donc, cette étude, comme vous savez tous, elle s'inscrit dans un contexte économique mondiale que vous connaissez, donc c'est-à-dire avec un développement économique le siècle dernier qui a conduit à la mise en place d'une crise écologique et d'une crise climatique sans précédent. Donc il y a aujourd'hui urgence à réfléchir au modèle économique qu'on met en place et à quel changement on doit mettre en place dans ces modèles économiques pour lutter contre ce changement climatique et cette crise écologique. Également, cette année, en 2020, est venue s'ajouter une crise sanitaire avec la crise du Covid-19 qui a mis à mal les échanges internationaux et notamment tous les échanges sur lesquels sont basées la plupart des économies mondiales et donc a causé pas mal de problèmes dans les territoires, notamment les territoires qui avaient leur économie basée sur ces échanges internationaux et leur subsistance basée sur ces échanges internationaux. Donc, en Nouvelle-Calédonie, en plus de ce contexte international, il y a également un contexte national avec une crise économique qui s'est mise en place ces dernières années, notamment liée à, on va dire, la chute du prix du nickel sur les marchés internationaux, puisque l'économie calédonienne est très largement basée, ces dernières années sur l'économie du nickel, donc extraction d'une ressource non renouvelable sur ce territoire. Et également donc, un avenir institutionnel qui est un petit peu instable en ce moment en Nouvelle-Calédonie, avec l'accession ou non à son indépendance, donc qui freine un petit peu les investissements à l'heure actuelle sur ce territoire. Donc, tous ces paramètres ont fait que certaines personnes ont voulu s'intéresser à voir comment on pouvait diversifier l'économie calédonienne, et notamment en quoi la transition écologique à forte soutenabilité pouvait être un levier pour cette diversification économique et aller vers une économie beaucoup plus soutenable à l'avenir sur ce territoire. Donc, donc économie à forte soutenabilité, on entend ici, dans cette étude, une économie où la richesse globale du territoire, c'est-à-dire cette richesse globale qui est basée sur ces trois capitales, le capital naturel, le capital physique et le capital humain. Donc, ces trois capitales sont considérées comme ne pouvant pas être interchangeables, c'est-à-dire qu'on ne peut pas demain remplacer le capital naturel qu'on détruit par un capital physique, par exemple, par des choses qu'on mettra en place pour remplacer ce capital naturel. Donc, comment on s'est intéressé dans cette étude à savoir comment cette transition écologique à forte soutenabilité pouvait être un levier pour la diversification économique. Et notamment, on s'est intéressé sur les trois piliers du développement durable, que sont l'économie, les aspects sociaux et l'environnement, sur quels aspects il fallait jouer pour qu'on arrive à une économie fortement soutenable et diversifiée. Donc, sur la partie économie, il s'agit notamment de limiter les pertes économiques liées à l'importation. C'est-à-dire que la Nouvelle-Calédonie, comme beaucoup de territoires insulaires dans le Pacifique, importe beaucoup de produits. Et donc ça, c'est de la richesse qui est perdue. C'est de la richesse qui est captée par les pays exportateurs et non pas par la Nouvelle-Calédonie. Également, donc, on s'est intéressé, on est sur les aspects économiques, c'est à favoriser la circulation et la distribution des richesses au sein même du tissu économique national, donc de la Nouvelle-Calédonie. Voir comment on pouvait améliorer ces circulations de richesses au sein des différents maillons de l'économie calédonienne. Sur les aspects environnementaux, c'est notamment de maintenir le bon état des écosystèmes, mais également de voir comment on pouvait maintenir ce capital naturel, voire regagner du capital naturel. Parce que...
Excuse me, Yannick, can you re-share your screen, please? I think we've lost your screen. Thank you.
Ah, OK. OK. Vous pouvez voir l'écran?
We can see the screen.
Make it full.
It's OK? Yeah.
Can you make it like one full page, as in a presentation page? We can see about 4 different pages on the screen.
Wow. Like this. Like this?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Sorry. Donc, je disais donc que on s'est intéressé donc aux 3 piliers de développement durable, notamment les aspects environnementaux, donc voir comment on pouvait maintenir le capital naturel de la Nouvelle-Calédonie, mais également regagner du capital naturel sur ce territoire, puisque les activités économiques passées ont eu un impact sur le capital naturel de la Nouvelle-Calédonie, notamment l'activité minière, et donc voir comment aujourd'hui on pouvait donc restaurer ces écosystèmes et regagner du capital naturel. Mais également donc agir en faveur de la nature à travers la mise en place d'approches avec d'économie circulaire, c'est-à-dire comment faire en sorte qu'un déchet issu d'une filière devienne une ressource pour une et donc faire en sorte soit demain basée plus fortement sur ces ressources renouvelables et pas uniquement sur ces ressources non renouvelables. Également sur les aspects sociétaux, donc ça a été de regarder comment favoriser la répartition des richesses, et notamment au niveau des différents territoires géographiques de Nouvelle-Calédonie. Aujourd'hui, l'activité économique est fortement concentrée sur la zone urbaine de Nouméa, la capitale, et donc avec très peu de tissu économique sur le reste du territoire. Donc aujourd'hui, c'était de regarder quels sont les secteurs économiques qu'on pouvait développer à travers cette transition, l'activité économique, mais également respecter et promouvoir les différentes cultures présentes en Nouvelle-Calédonie et faire en sorte que les travailleurs soient traités équitablement et améliorer la santé et la performance des travailleurs. Donc, c'est l'ensemble de ces critères qui ont été pris en compte dans notre étude. Donc, pour mettre en place différents critères, à la fois des critères socio-économiques. Donc pour ça, on s'est basé sur les différents chiffres collectés par les instituts statistiques calédoniennes pour identifier et caractériser l'activité économique. Donc notamment les chiffres de l'emploi, les chiffres de la production des différents secteurs, et on les a analysés. Donc on les a analysés à travers différents indicateurs. Donc, sur cette diapo, je vous présente un petit peu une synthèse des résultats de l'analyse des indicateurs économiques. Donc, on peut voir sur ce graphique, sur l'axe des abscisses, donc les différents effets d'entraînement des différents secteurs économiques, c'est-à-dire la production, la valeur ajoutée et l'emploi, donc c'est-à-dire les effets d'entraînement qu'il y a pour ces différents secteurs, qui existent pour ces différents secteurs, et également territoire de la Nouvelle-Calédonie pour ces différents. Permettre de capter beaucoup plus de richesses.
Okay, let's give him 15 minutes.
Donc, on peut voir ici sur ce graphique que le secteur de l'agriculture, le secteur de la pêche et de l'aquaculture, mais également le secteur de la sylviculture sont des secteurs qui apparaissent intéressants d'un point de vue économique pour cette transition. Alors que d'autres secteurs, comme la métallurgie et l'industrie du nickel, apparaissent donc avec notamment des indicateurs de richesse captée assez faibles, puisque ce sont des industries où la principale valeur ajoutée se fait à l'extérieur de la Nouvelle-Calédonie et pas en Nouvelle-Calédonie. Donc, elle ne rapporte pas forcément au territoire. Donc, on a également étudié des indicateurs environnementaux. Donc, pour ce faire, on a collecté on va les secteurs qui ont plutôt un impact positif sur l'environnement. Et plus on descend vers le bas du graphique, en rouge, les secteurs qui ont un impact négatif sur l'environnement. Donc, pour identifier les différents secteurs qu'on et on a pu identifier 5 grands secteurs pour la transition écologique en Nouvelle-Calédonie, qui sont les secteurs listés ici à pourrait présenter un potentiel pour la suite. Donc ces secteurs, qui sont habituellement identifiés pour la transition écologique, là l'étude a permis notamment de mettre donc des chiffres et d'objectiver le choix de ces secteurs avec à l'appui des chiffres sur leur retombée économique à l'échelle de ce territoire et leur retombée environnementale. Donc ensuite, une fois ces secteurs identifiés, on a regardé et dressé une feuille de route pour chacun de ces secteurs en travaillant avec les différents acteurs des institutions pour regarder un petit peu quels étaient les freins et les leviers sur lesquels on pouvait s'appuyer aujourd'hui pour développer ces secteurs. Donc, là, sont listés ici, je ne vais pas les lire, mais sont listés différents types d'actions qu'on a identifiées pour mettre en place et développer ces secteurs ici à 2040 en Nouvelle-Calédonie. Donc voilà, et donc c'est quelques-unes des actions listées. Les documents sont fournis aux institutions locales, plus d'actions, et chacune des actions est développée pour qu'ils puissent avoir une feuille de route opérationnelle pour la suite. Donc, également, on s'est intéressé au financement de ce plan d'action pour les années qui viennent. Donc, on a calculé, combien allait coûter la mise en place de ce plan d'action et le budget de ressources qu'il fallait mettre en place pour aller vers cette transition écologique. Donc, elle a été estimée à 140 millions de francs CFP, soit environ 1,4
Hey, Yannick.
milliards CFP.
Yannick, if I may, Yannick. Hey, Yannick, I'm sorry.
Ces sommes se répartissent un petit peu.
Can you wrap up, sort of?
Oui, pas de souci. Donc voilà, ces sommes se répartissent comme ils sont présentés sur le camembert. Et donc, pour conclure, j'allais venir justement, cette première étude donc, de cette hypothèse de la transition écologique à forte soutenabilité pour relancer l'économie du territoire calédonien, c'est un exemple de ce qui pourrait être fait sur les différents territoires du Pacifique, donc identiques à la Nouvelle-Calédonie. Et donc, pour mettre en place et penser une transition écologique également à plus large échelle, donc à l'échelle régionale, à l'échelle du Pacifique. Donc, je vous remercie de votre attention.
Thank you very much, Yannick. So thank you everyone for your patience. It's been a great session from all the speakers, where we started off with Karen talking about the regional trends and the impact of agriculture on ecosystems and the environment, to Jerry Spooner from Vanuatu talking about the government's plans for tourism and how to improve tourism sector given COVID-19. And of course, some practical hints from Jody on how communities could be involved, how communities could ready themselves for investment. And finally, from Yannick, thank you, Yannick. That's a very impressive study you've got there. And it's something that, perhaps can be looked at in terms of the regional pieces. But I guess one of the key pieces that's really coming out in all the various presentation that we've heard this morning, really is, how has COVID impacted market access domestically, globally, and how local communities and businesses in Pacific Island countries well positioned for that. And of course, in terms of certification, to both Jody and Karen's point, how can we ensure that our communities are ready? What's necessary to make communities ready for certification, if that's going to be the better option and the better market moving forward, given Karen's point that economic resilience really goes hand in hand with environmental resilience. So yeah, I invite the panelists. There are some questions in the Q&A box if you would like to respond to them. Thank you. Karen?
Thanks, Susanna. I'd just like to respond to one of the questions about how to make the case for industries to directly support nature conservation from Leah. I hate to be really cynical, but I guess we have to monetize it. Often an industry or a business or even a government will want to see an economic benefit. So tying those two things together, saying you can't have sustainable economic growth if we're not preserving our environments, I think an argument we need to be able to develop and present more strongly. I think that's one of the points there. And if I can just briefly touch on the COVID question, Susanna, talking to farmers and the various surveys that have been done with farmers, one of the biggest impacts, apart from accessing to markets, was availability of inputs, the things that we are bringing in to support our agriculture industry. And again, that also speaks to the need for us to have systems that are more self-reliant, not dependent on imported seeds or imported inputs. Again, they're all things that impact on the environment. So I think there's a lot of lessons learned to learn there about the sustainability going forward during the different shocks. I'll let someone else have a go.
Thank you. Jody, would you like to make some answers to the questions that are there?
Sure, there are a few answers here. Should I just select one of them? Sorry, a few questions here.
Yes.
Okay, let's have a look. Right, from Paul, can you elaborate on the barriers to profitability as well as the scale needed to make products viable when considering the barriers to accessing these locations? Okay, one of the big things is cost of certification. In the first year, Bulumbatiki spent $25,000 on food safety and organic certification. This was more than they made. So that was really the first thing. And I would love to see participatory guarantee system schemes really be better promoted and better accepted by markets. And yeah, for us to find ways to do that. In terms of scale, so we went through this just this weekend when I was on Batiki, working 8 days per month, which is their current production. Now, when I say 8 days per month, it doesn't sound like much, but when you think that the community has so many other things that they do, like women are weaving, the men are fishing, there's farming, there's family time, there's schooling. If you think about all of these things going on, 8 days is reasonably significant. For the business to make profit with the current product, they would need to be producing 24 days per month. This is why we're now looking at these other products. And if I had been introduced to this company right at the start, I would have actually looked at these other products first. So with surfboard wax, sunglasses, and the sunglasses wouldn't be made on Batiki, they would actually be contracted. But the profit margin on those is more than 35%, whereas with the existing product, we're barely even at 5% profit margin. So I hope that helps answer. I could spend hours talking about it.
Oh, thank you, Jody. Yannick, there is a question for you from Paul Mukin. Would you like to respond to that, Yannick?
Yes. What is the question? Is
the graph that details the economic sector's contribution to sustainability for New Caledonia. Can you please provide definition of captured wealth index and linkage effect index?
Yes. Pour l'indice des effets d'entraînement sur l'emploi, la production, et donc c'est une agglomération des trois indicateurs. Donc ils sont, alors pour les effets d'entraînement, c'est-à-dire que, pour donner un exemple, pour essayer d'être clair, pour $1 injecté dans l'industrie de la pêche, par exemple, on va créer tant d'emplois sur le secteur de la pêche et tous les secteurs qui sont reliés à la pêche. Donc, c'est-à-dire des emplois directs, ça va être le pêcheur. Les emplois indirects, ça va être le poissonnier qui va vendre le poisson du pêcheur. Et les emplois induits, donc ça va être tous les emplois qui sont créés autour du poissonnier, c'est-à-dire ça peut être les personnes qui travaillent pour le poissonnier, donc sa femme de ménage ou d'autres types d'emplois qui sont induits par le poissonnier et par sa consommation à lui. Donc également, pour la richesse captée, donc ça va être la richesse qui reste sur le territoire, c'est-à-dire, alors je ne suis pas le spécialiste économique de l'étude, mais ça, pour faire simple, c'est la richesse qui va pas être exportée, c'est-à-dire ce qui va rester réellement sur le territoire national et qui ne va pas sortir du territoire. Donc, là-dedans, c'est pour un secteur de production comme l'agriculture, par exemple, ça va être la richesse qu'un génère une fois qu'on a déduit donc les dépenses liées à l'importation, que ce soit l'importation des engrais qui viennent de l'extérieur ou l'importation de la nourriture animale qui vient de l'extérieur, par exemple. Donc voilà, ça va être la richesse qu'elle génère une fois qu'on a déduit les sommes qui sortent pour les importations. Je ne sais pas si ça répond à la question.
Thank you, Jerry. Yannick, sorry. Thank you, Yannick. So I guess the last question I'd like to pose to Jerry. Jerry, can you speak a bit more about how tourism in Vanuatu is encouraging community ownership and engagement and considering cultural values? Can you unmute yourself? Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, the floor is yours. Thank you, Jerry.
Can you repeat your question again? Sorry.
If you can speak a little bit more about how tourism in Vanuatu is encouraging community ownership and engagement and considering cultural values integrated into tourism.
Okay. I think just building on from my presentation, with the provincial tourism plans that we're putting together, the focus there is to support community at some point. So supporting community managed attractions, and with the hope that it addresses disputes from tourism related activities, as we've seen from the past. So we have our tour guide conservation program that I mentioned in one of my, my only questions raised earlier. So getting rural people, community people paid as rangers to maintain their own conservation areas, because that's been an outstanding long issue that we haven't been able to address. So we believe with this community support program, getting tour guides paid as rangers, I think we see that as a solution to this issue.
Thank you, Jerry. That's great. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who's out there listening to this session. Thank you to the panelists. We only have a few more minutes, and perhaps just a takeaway spot from all the panelists, if there's anything that you'd like to say as your key point for our audience to take away, and then we'll just use this to round up the session. Anyone of the panelists?
I'll have a go. I'd just like to say, I think, and this is in, I guess, directed at our policymakers, let's really be ambitious in this sphere. We can't afford to be too conservative when we're looking at our resilience. And there are a lot of some really good examples around, and I'll refer again to the current EU New Green Deal as a really good example of what can be done with policy to promote sustainability and good food systems and all of the things that we've been talking about today.
Thank you. I can see Jody. Jody, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, just from me, I can't stress enough how important planning is, but also having communities own their own businesses, that really motivates people in a way I've not seen before. So I think community ownership, but to give communities support to actually run those businesses themselves is really, really key to long-term sustainability of the business and to deliver those longer-term environmental impacts and social impacts as well.
All right, thank you everyone. It's been a wonderful session, and we really threshed out, balancing protection and production and looking at how we can apply that at the policy level and also at the ground level with community, and of course applying theories as Yannick had shared some of the studies that they're doing in New Caledonia, which is quite exciting. Thank you everyone. Thank you to all our audience who have listened in. Again, there's the lounge. If you do have questions, afterthought questions, please connect with the speakers directly in the lounge. And I do hope that you'll enjoy the whole nature conference sessions. Vinaka.